Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Lincoln City's Matchday Live. The Imps travelling to Rochdale this time, looking to build on that fantastic midweek win against Wigan Athletic. The Imps, of course, looking to extend the gap between the playoff and automatic places in League One. Today we'll be looking back at that brilliant win from Tuesday night. Tom Hopper's last-minute goal securing the points for the Imps. We'll also be hearing from one of the midfield dynamos as well. Conor McGrandles tells us exactly how he's settling into life and enjoying life here in the city of Lincoln. And of course, we'll have the team news for you live right bang on 2 o'clock this afternoon. Do let us know where you're watching Matchday Live from. Give us your score and scorer predictions too. And now that we're a third of the way through the season, I'd like to hear from you, Lincoln City fans, on who you think is the Imps player of the season so far. So let me know your thoughts on that, and I'll do my best to read those out throughout the show. Gary Hutchinson joins me as ever. Gary, great to see you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Rocking the new formation gear here as well. I'm sure you watched the show on Thursday. Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it, yeah. And Ben won't live down forgetting which year we won the Vauxhall Conference.
No, absolutely. And whilst we're here, big apologies to Adam Leader as well. We gave him some absolute stinkers of questions there. We'll have to get Adam back on the show at some stage and give him an opportunity to redeem himself. Gary, with two games... Well, we had two games, didn't we, to look back on for Lincoln City throughout the week. It was a busy week. And of course, in terms of the EFL, we've got fans back in the stadiums now, or fans back in some stadiums at least. Looking back on that, what were the emotions? I guess it's sort of bittersweet, isn't it, from a Lincoln point of view?
Yeah, really bittersweet. I think I felt quite selfish, actually, because I watched Gareth Ainsworth walking around the ground at Wickham. I watched the Charlton fans cheering their team out. And my first thought wasn't brilliant, isn't that great? Because it wasn't us. I know that's selfish. My overriding emotion is great. We're taking some tentative steps, but until it directly affects Lincoln City, it's hard to get too overjoyed. But on the flip side, Charlton were booed off at the end of their game by 2,000 fans. So, maybe they're not as delighted as some people think.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, isn't it? You mentioned Charlton there. You almost sit and you think, how could you possibly boo the players off so early on in something like that? But I suppose there is that dose of normality as well. It almost sort of warms the cockles to think, yeah, we're getting back to normal now. Fans, whether they're booing, whether they're cheering, it's just normality to an extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, if I take my selfish cap off, what we all want to do is get back into football grounds. It's been 9 months or so since we beat Burton. So to know that is happening across the country is really good. And it's jealousy. It's actually outright jealousy that to see those fans who are able to go and watch their team and us not at the moment. But obviously, the fact that fans are going into grounds is a start, and that's a journey that hopefully will result in us seeing Michael Appleton's side before the end of the season.
You're getting your comments in thick and fast regarding the Imps player of the season so far. Malcolm Johnson says between Lewis Monsmart and George Grant so far for player of the season for Malcolm. Owen says George Grant and Lewis Monsmart should get Players of the Year award so far. They both really deserve it. Scott Connery says, me and my dad are watching the match today at home. The score will be 3-2 to the Imps. Harry Anderson, Tom Hopper and Scully as well. Gary, the Imps second in the table now. I mean, Tuesday night, it felt like one of those games, and we've been lucky enough to see quite a few of these over the past few years. It felt like one of those nights where, as a Lincoln City fan, you had to sort of sit back and take stock of just where this club is with regards to, the League One table.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was kind of the rhetoric that I was putting out there on Wednesday morning. And it's easy to look at a game as a single standalone kind of event and go, "Well, we didn't play very well for 70 minutes," or "This wasn't that good." But we're second in League One. And when you do stand back and you look at some of the other results and you look at some of the teams underneath us, it's one of those kind of wow moments where, arguably a lot, probably like Wickham last season. Wickham Wanderers were right up there for long periods of time, and people kept saying they'll fall away. And they didn't. And I think for Lincoln fans, sometimes we have to step back. I was in 2016-17 when we were on brilliant FA Cup run and won the National League. I'd come away from a game against Bromley that we won 1-0 going, we haven't got enough now to go, well, that wasn't a convincing result. So it's important to hold some perspective and look at the bigger picture, certainly.
Let's have a look back at those Wigan Athletic highlights then from Tuesday night, Gary. This one here, it starts with fine work from Tom Hopper. Ironically, some brilliant pressing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I thought Hopper was probably man of the match. Okay, strikers are judged on goals. We've had this conversation all week long. But the link-up play, the amount of work he puts in outside the area as we said last week, is integral to what we do. Look, I didn't think we played too badly, but football is a game of goals. And when you're not really getting great chances or not hitting the target and testing the keeper, it's easy for fans to start looking for a scapegoat. James Jones, whisker away there. He's a player I think will very soon get himself on the score sheet, as will 2 or 3 of the others. Slightly
unfortunate with regards to the goal?
Yeah, hugely unfortunate. Look, I thought Teo was really unlucky to lose the ball for a start. I thought that we were on the attack. Naismith's a quality player, but if it doesn't take the deflection, it doesn't go in. But that's football. These things happen. And then you get something like this to level it up. There's no fortune there at all, is there?
It's getting to the stage where when George grants over a free kick, it may as well be a penalty, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. He's a real dead ball specialist. You just felt that he was going to go on and get the goal. And I think, that was a penalty, by the way. But I think then after that, I think we were not unstoppable, but we were just in complete control of the game from start to finish. And ultimately, we got our rewards in the end.
Yeah, that was Anthony Scully that went over in the box. And Gary, when Scully moved to that left-hand side with around about 20 minutes to go or so, do you think that changed the game? Brilliant cross from him there as well that Joe Walsh nearly puts in the back of the net, but for the clearance on the line. Do you think actually with Anthony Scully, perhaps the left side is arguably his better side?
It is. I really like him cutting in for a start. He's created a couple of chances. Obviously, he got the assist there, but there was a goal, I think, against Forest Green. He won the penalty coming in from the left-hand side and was fouled. I really like him on there. I think if we're being brutally honest, I think he probably struggled for the first 60 minutes of the game out on the right-hand side. It's horses for courses as well. Some games you're going to need something different to Anthony Scully, more brute force and brute pace in the likes of Harry Anderson. But Scully's got craft, he's got guile. And one thing that really sticks out for me is if he's having a bad game, he's never defeated. The head doesn't drop. And if you play badly for 60 minutes and then suddenly spring into life, create a goal and look like scoring for 30, then arguably you've done your job.
What about Tom Hopper then? Huge moment for him. Great scenes in the by the corner flag there when he scored that winning goal for the Imps, his 4th goal of the season. How big a moment is that for a striker when they score a last-minute or near last-minute winner, and in this case help take their side to second in League One?
I think it's huge. I think it's huge generally for a striker anyway. I think if you're a James Norwood that's scoring 20, 25, 28 a season, it's probably water off the duck's back. But for somebody like Tom, who does work tirelessly, and he is an easy target because, there have been some balls into the box where you think, if we'd had a number 9 that was pressing and running in, we would have scored there. But in actual fact, he's an integral part of what we do. He works so hard. And I was delighted for Tom. I don't want that to sound patronising and, the striker that hasn't been scoring's got a goal, how nice. I was actually delighted because it was just reward for the sort of runs that he does actually make. Let's not forget, that's 2 in 4 games, I think, now. And if he can continue that and get somewhere near double figures before the end of the season, we had a leading scorer the year that we won the title in John Akindi, who I think scored 6 from open play. So as long as the team start and continue to score goals and win games, individual criticism is completely counterproductive.
And we're seeing from these goals here, Gary, that he's always, he is the Imps number 9, but he's always there in those number 9 positions as well. How important is it to have a player that that if you put a decent cross into the box, he'll be there?
Yep, I think if he was more selfish, he would be in those positions more. But then you wouldn't get his hard work outside the box. So it's easy to say, a decent number 9 or a poacher would be there. He is the definition of poacher. How many of his goals that we've just seen have come 6 to 8 yards out? And certain Gary Lineker made a career out of doing that. Now, I'm not comparing them in terms of ability. I'm not comparing them in terms of what they're going to achieve. But in terms of where they pop up in the box, Tom Hopper is very much like that. But he does an awful lot of work. And we were talking about clean sheets a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying often you see Tom back defending. You do, and I think that's testament to the type of player that he is. And as long as we keep winning, I think he's an integral part.
Yeah, certainly so. Great stuff for Tom Hopper on Tuesday night. Gary, we're going to be speaking to Steve Haynes very shortly, Lincoln City fan, a member of the 617 Squadron as well. Looking forward to seeing Steve on the show. In the meantime, let's hear from yesterday's birthday boy, Michael Appleton. This is what he had to say in his pre-match press conference.
No, they're still the same. Very patient, like you say. Try to play through the lines. They tend to have willing runners in the final third in terms of the strikers. So it's not just in front of you. It'll be a good test for us. There's no doubt about it. They tend to play with a bit of freedom. There's 3 or 4 clubs I feel in the league who, there's not massive expectations on them as a club. They do well. every year, or seem to sort of do well every year by being competitive and staying within the teams and the groups. But I think it's one of them where, I don't know if it's a good thing and a bad thing with the fans sort of not being in the stadium, but ultimately, it's another game for us to try and put a marker and see where we're at a further way through the season.
Certainly a lot of the results on Tuesday and Wednesday nobody would have predicted. Does that show how crucial nights like Tuesday are, when you can not necessarily play at your best but get a result?
Yeah, and that was the message to the players yesterday. They had a day off Wednesday, and we did a bit of post-match analysis, with the Wigan game, and went through things that we did well and didn't do particularly well. But a lot of the discussion, or a lot of talking I did, was around that mentality side of it, because I think there's been some really good stuff and spells within the games recently where we played really well, and then bits of the games where we haven't played particularly well, but we've got to respect the opposition. They're always going to have a good part of it, and I think some of the results surprised me to a degree, but was just basically answering a lot of the questions I was almost asking myself and the team before Tuesday night's game.
I believe it is a special day today, is that right?
Oh, I won't go that far. Apparently it's someone's birthday.
Does that mean you have to bring the cakes in for the whole team, or is it just your coaching staff you have to look after?
No, I've got 4 dozen crispy crens for the staff and players, so it should be enough to go around.
Good. They won't give you the bumps at the end of training, will they?
Yeah, I hope not, yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone quite so bashful about having a birthday, but Michael Appleton hopefully enjoying some Krispy Kreme donuts there. Let's now bring in 617 Squadron member and all-round Lincoln City fan, Steve Haynes. We'll bring in Gary Hutchinson as well. Delighted to have Steve on the show. And Steve, we've been seeing some 617 Squadron videos over the course of this season. Of course, hope to see you back at the LNER Stadium very soon. Great to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing really well, actually. It's great to see you both again, Sam, Gary.
There we go. We've lost Steve on the sound already. He's looking great there. The Christmas tree is looking brilliant. The flags are looking absolutely fantastic. Can we hear you, Steve?
Hello.
There he is.
Hello, you got me?
We have got you.
Okay. I just wanted to say that just on behalf of all of us, really, thank you to you guys, Sam and Gary, because it's been a really, really tough few months, hasn't it, for all of us? And I think it's so important that we've kept the connection with the club, which has built up massively over the last few years, and you guys have aided that brilliantly over the last few weeks. So thank you.
No, that's very kind. I mean, from yourself, Steve, you've been working hard as with part of the 617 for absolutely years. So certainly from a fan's perspective, thank you to you for everything that you've done. Tell us how much you've missed being at the LNER Stadium over the last sort of, 6 months or so?
To be honest, Sam, without delving too much into my private life, the network of friends that I've built up over the years of being a football fan, football supporter, initially through the Leicester City side of things, but then obviously over the last 40 years, more and more involved in the Lincoln City side of things. They've always been my go-to group, and I know a lot of people that I speak to on social media feel the same. So to have that network not there over the last few months has been really, really tough. It's the social side of things more than the result, and I think Gary's mentioned that a few times over the last few weeks, very eloquently. The whole putting the match day together, however you do it, whether you're going with friends and family, travelling up from another part of the country as I do and many others do. It's that coming together on match day where you can share all your worries and concerns and then get involved in the football side of things. Missed it greatly. I was made redundant a few months ago and went through the stresses of finding new employment, which thankfully I have. But the go-to group have always been the Lincoln lads. Some of those are Squadron lads, and some of them are friends and colleagues or friends that I've built up over the last few years.
And we're nearly there, aren't we, Steve? We're nearly there in terms of having that sort of social element back at the LNER Stadium as well. Just hopefully just a few weeks away. Gary, tell us what the 617 mean to the club overall.
Well, a huge amount. I mean, my words can't do it justice. I think what's actually been really good is to watch them grow from November 2011. I remember the original 7, so to speak, and kind of having the occasional word with Connor before I knew any of the other lads. I think really they came into their own, probably, in my opinion, in the era of Gary Simpson, where, you know, the club was beginning to come out and emerge from that shadow. But it needed a kick. It always needed a kick from the sidelines. You know, they've always stood by their principles. Sometimes they've got in, you know, they've stood by what they believe in when other people have perhaps kind of gone against them. And I respect that as well. They're a massive part of the football club now. I'm not saying that just because Steve's on, but you know, we've got an awful lot of fans now. But those boys were there when the ground was sparse, when people were sat sort of on a whole row to themselves, and they helped carry the atmosphere forward. And, you know, some of those displays will live with me forever in the title-winning season and the year before. Utterly phenomenal.
Steve, just try and paint the picture, if you can, what it's like to be in that Block 7 on a big match day.
It's phenomenal. And actually, if it's okay, I just want to touch on one of Gary's comments a minute ago, because when we're looking at the very colourful recent history of the club, my actual personal opinion of when things started to go in the right direction was when Gary Simpson actually took over the reins for a bit. And I think prior to that, we'd lost the goodwill. And when Gary took over, because of the connection to Keith, we all sort of came together. Okay, it was dreadful fodder most weeks, and there was some particularly harrowing drives back down the A46, having seen another poor performance. But I think that was the point where there was a togetherness again between what we were trying to achieve as the 617 and the players and the club, and it's forgotten quite a bit in the comments made about the recent history. Blimey, I mean, to be honest, where do we start? I mean, the day starts first thing in the morning, really. I mean, we try and stay over possibly on a Friday night if possible, and make a whole weekend of it up there, travelling up from Leicester. So meeting the lads first thing in the morning, you can imagine the buzz that's created in two or three of the bars on the way down to the ground. But it's just that coming together, the sharing of the stories, the discussions of how the previous week's gone. But all of the discussions we have in the last sort of 2 or 3 hours are leading up to that game, waiting for the team news, who's playing, a possible discussion about new songs, of course, and what we can try and introduce to Block 7. But the journey that we've had since 2011 has been quite fantastic, because there was a few misconceptions when we first started, and when Connor started with the original 3 and 7. The misconceptions were sort of turned out to be wrong, and what we've tried to create is something really infectious, and I think over the last 4 or 5 years that's become more apparent. It's just electric in there. To have people's children come up and have their photos taken with the drums and things, it's just it just shows we're going in the right direction, and we can't wait to be putting more displays on.
Steve, now that we're a third of the way through the season, we're talking Lincoln City players of the season so far. For you, who's the standout man?
That's a good question. I think as a collective, what Michael's done, it's fantastic, and I think he jumped the gun. I've met Michael a few times, both when he was here and when he was Portsmouth manager, and he's got a real air of commanding a room. And his knowledge and passion for the game is as good as anybody that I've had the pleasure of speaking to. And I think we stole a march on everybody else. The club was aware of the COVID situation, and we stole a march. Michael was on the phone sorting out the loan deals. So to get Palmer and Morton obviously was just incredible. Performance-wise, it's a collective, because we've had... Obviously, we've had Teo play at left back. We've had Sean Rowan play at left back. We've got Max back playing at left back, and it's those sort of positional options that we've got for the first time in a long time. I would personally stick up for Teo. I think he's brilliant. I think he shows no fear when he loses possession, he's quick to show the right mentality and go and try and get the ball back and then make the easy pass. Obviously, Lewis is just an absolute star. If he's not a 7-figure sale in the next 3 or 4 years, then we'll never have one. Personal favourite, probably TJ. I think he commands that right back spot, and some of the marauding runs he makes are just so exciting. I just wish I was at the LNER at Cinebank just to see it. It's just electric stuff at the moment.
Just finally then, Steve, can the Imps do it? Can they make it into the Championship this season, do you think?
I believe they can. The club and Michael believe they can. One of his early quotes, I believe, on social media and on Twitter was he'd leave us in the Championship. I believe that we're in good shape. We've got a really good collective. I think the togetherness at the club and the supporters is just as good as I've known it in 40 years. It's just absolutely fantastic. And I think it was touched on the other evening. I did watch Thursday's show in between shifts at work, and somebody comes out of the pack. I mean, we're mixing with the elite at the moment, if you think about it. We've got Hull and Charlton, Ipswich, Portsmouth and Sunderland up there. We're actually mixing with some of the elite of the Football League.
This is the table, Steve. It doesn't make bad viewing, does it?
It's phenomenal, Sam. Phenomenal, Sam. It almost makes me emotional looking at that table, and we can do it. I strongly believe it. I fancy us to win today. I fancy Tom to get another goal today. His work rate and his ethic is just phenomenal.
Steve, really appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing you back at the LNER Stadium very soon.
Sam, Gary, thank you again. And if I don't speak to you prior to Christmas, I'd just like to wish you two guys especially, and everybody that knows me and everybody that doesn't, a very Merry Christmas.
Absolutely, well said. The thoughts of the 617 Squadron member, Steve Haynes. There, really appreciate having Steve on today's Matchday Live. Right now, if you watched Thursday night's Team Talk show, you'll have seen the nominations for November Goal of the Month. If you missed it, these are the candidates.
Finding a bit of space for George Grant, and he does have room to run into. He's going to take the shot on, and it's a brilliant effort. Little short. Brennan. All his own work, and he's found the finish coolly into the corner as well to make it 3-0. Brennan Johnson. Really well done. Plenty of space for Scully. Run, and he will get it back. Deep playing the build-up again. It's a really cool finish across the goalkeeper. It's 4-0, and Scully gets it.
Yeah, we couldn't not put a Lewis Montsma goal in there, could we? Some absolute belters in there as well. You've been voting on Twitter for your November Goal of the Month over the past couple of the days, or last couple of days, and this was the winner.
Finding a bit of space for George Grant, and he does have room to run into. He's going to take the shot on, and it's a brilliant effort.
Obvious question, Gary, but was it a worthy winner?
Oh, it was a worthy winner. It wasn't my pick, but everybody loves a pile driver, don't they? It looked sensational.
And which was your pick?
Anthony Scully's. To see a goal scored with 2 back heels at Sinsel Bank, thought it was a great team goal, really smart finish as well. But it's all down to opinion.
Yeah, we're blessed with a lot of good goals from November, weren't we? Just want to touch on something that Steve Haynes was talking about when he referred to the league table there. So if we bring that back in, and Gary, we'll just have a look at the table itself, because he mentioned just looking at some of the size of the other clubs in there. And I said it makes for great viewing. It really does, doesn't it? Simply down to the size of some of those football clubs.
Absolutely. I mean, you even go down to Fleetwood in 8th with their budget and their backing. You know, there might be a relatively small club in terms of the fans, but they're a huge club in terms of their budget. It makes fantastic reading, particularly with the game in hand, particularly when you consider, you know, the resources that are going to be available to the likes of Ipswich and Sunderland, even, you know, pre-bailout. Just for us to be competing up there is a testament to the work that Michael and the lads are doing off the field. It is exciting. Look, nothing's won in November and December. We get that. But it's been a very, very long time that we've actually been in this sort of position, even with last season, and actually believed we could stay there. We didn't last season. We got to second in the table. We got to top in the table early doors. Everybody just felt that was a precursor to slipping down to mid-table and cementing our place. Now, if we keep playing as we are doing, there's no reason why we can't remain in that sort of position, maybe a drop down a couple of places for the rest of the season. There's no reason why not.
Seems like there's going to be a really big few weeks coming up, in particular for Portsmouth and Ipswich. I believe they play each other in a week or so, maybe 10 days' time, Gary, and Portsmouth also have a big game today.
Yeah, Portsmouth have got an awful run. And you look at Kenny Jackett's position, you look at Paul Lambert's position. They're both managers that have been with their clubs for a while. Kenny Jackett, I think it's his 3rd or 4th season. Lambert is certainly his 3rd, maybe not full season. And the fans there are not all behind those managers. And so if they do get a couple of bad results, Ipswich in particular, those managers could change. Change of manager means change of emphasis. It might be new manager bounce, but it means, you know, uncertainty and squad churn. Whereas we're actually in a position where we know our manager is here. We know the players we've got. We know that the only way really for this Lincoln City team is up. So again, you know, they're big clubs, but in relation to where we are in terms of progression, they're probably actually a little bit behind us.
Let's go to some of your comments then. Steve O'Dare says Rochdale are going to be a tough nut to crack today. I think we'll need to be nearer to the excellent displays that we had in the first 10 league games to beat them. Hope we start with Monsma and Ward at the back. I'm presuming he means Walsh there, Steve. But good to have you with us on the show as ever, Steve O'Dare there. I saw another comment regarding one of the players of the season as well. I'll try and go back to that shortly. Someone said they were watching from Australia. That's it. Paul Johnson says, following all the way from Australia. Come on, the Imps. Keep going, boys. Been great watching the club progress over the last few years. Good luck for the rest of the season. Gary, we'll be going to the team news in around about a minute's time or so. Just before then, and we'll be speaking to a Rochdale journalist later on in the show. What are you expecting overall from Rochdale this afternoon?
I'm expecting them to play football the right way. As Michael said, they play with a certain freedom because, you know, many pundits expected them to be in the bottom 4. And when you're expected to be relegated, you can play with a freedom, as we found out in 2002-03. They have got quality, really like Ollie Rathbone. And for them, really like Matty Lund's got plenty of experience as well. But it is like Tuesday night, it's another winnable game. And if you are aspiring to finish in the top 6 with absolutely no disrespect intended whatsoever, you have got to be getting something away at Rochdale.
Right, it's 2:00, which means it's time for today's Lincoln City team news. Yeah, Michael Appleton makes 3 changes to the side that beat Wigan Athletic on Tuesday night. It is Alex Palmer, TJ Ioma, Lewis Monsma, Joe Walsh, Teo Eden. George Grant is the captain, Conor McGrandles, James Jones, Brennan Johnson, Harry Anderson, and the goal-scoring hero from Tuesday night, Tom Hopper, retains his place as well. The bench is then Long, Melbourne, Scully, Archibald, Howarth, Gotts, and Sean Rowan. So it is Walsh in for Jackson. Of course, Jackson picking up a slight injury on Tuesday night. TJ Ioma comes in for Robbie Gotts, and Harry Anderson is in for Anthony Scully. Gary, let's start from the defence then, as we always do. What do you make of that back 4?
Yes, almost as expected. I mean, Lewis Mons was always going to play. Joe Walsh was going to come in for Adam Jackson. I think we said the other night that when you've got Joe Walsh as a so-called backup, you know, it's got a really firm feel to it. Teo Eden, I think he's had 2 of his best games in Lincoln shirts over the last 2 matches. I think he's certainly growing into the role. He makes lots of interesting and important runs. And with TJ, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and we discussed kind of what TJ done wrong because he's dropped out the side. I don't think it was what he's done wrong. I think it's what Robbie Gotts has done right. I think he comes in today on the basis of the fact that Robbie's played probably a couple of 90 minutes now, and it's just a typical squad rotation.
Let's talk about Teo Eden then. I know you've done an article about him on the StaceyWest.net. Steve Haynes singled him out as one of the best players so far this season as well. I mean, from my point of view, it seems like he's gone under the radar slightly. How would you? Well, obviously, I know that you'd rate his performances really highly, judging by what you said the other day.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I set out to write the article to prove that he had got better with his passing, more accurate, more passes. And in actual fact, he's doing exactly the same sort of stats he was doing at the beginning of the season. The same number of passes, the same sort of direction. But what he's actually doing is he's got a lot cleverer, I think. I think he's settled into the formation a little bit more now. So rather than his sideways passes and not passing as much forward, I think he's being much neater. He's got great feet. Look, he's a central midfielder playing at left back. And I think you see that sometimes in the way that he controls the ball and the way he looks to glide and cut inside. He had a tough start to the season. He didn't play a league game in September. And when I spoke to Michael, he said, Teo's out of the team at the minute. He will become an important part. He will grow into it. And I think we're seeing that now. Michael knows his players better than anybody at all. He had reason not to play Teo in September. Being left out of the side, I think, has really spurred him on. He's a player that is, as you've just said, he's under the radar. But in terms of accruing value and in terms of the method of developing players and selling them on, he's one that actually doesn't get mentioned a lot and could go on to much bigger things.
George Grant back in the number 10 role there, the central role. Is that a position that you like to see him play? And we actually don't talk that much about George Grant, considering just how good he's been this season, because it seems like every performance that he dominates the game, we sort of expect that now, don't we?
Yeah, he runs the show, doesn't he? It'd be a little bit like trying to talk about Ronaldo every week for Portugal, wouldn't it? We know he does. Wherever you put him, he's going to do the same sort of thing. So let's talk about everyone else. But in fact, George Grant, hugely versatile player, can play in the 6, can play in the 8, can play 11, can play 10. And when he's in the team, you don't actually know. Rochdale will look at that and think maybe it's 4-3-3 with Grant and Jones, kind of the 2 attacking midfielders. But it could just as easily be a 4-2-3-1. Grant could actually be out on the left, Anderson could be on the right, and Johnson could be playing behind Hopper. Or it could be that Grant is in the 10 role. So we know nothing at all from looking at the 11, not really. And that's testament to how good George Grant is, not in one position, not in 2 positions, but 3 or 4. And I think that's, he's a big, big player for us. We've got to hang on to him in January.
Can Anthony Scully count himself a little bit unlucky that he's not in the starting 11 today, considering what we said about him in terms of his particularly his last 20 minutes for Lincoln on Tuesday night? A little bit hard done by, perhaps?
Honestly, in my opinion, no, because I think we've got to rotate. You've got to keep bringing players in. And you say, okay, you could say, yes, he had a great 20 minutes, but, that was his 2nd, 3rd start in a row. Harry Anderson's had to sit out, and every time Harry's been coming on, he's had massive impact. We're talking about player of the year, and for me, it's Harry Anderson so far. I think because he's showed his versatility, because of how much he's improved, of how he's changed his game. And again, looking ahead to this match, I thought ideally 4-3-3 with really quick wingers who are going to absolutely batter the line. That's Brennan Johnson and that's Harry Anderson. Anthony Scully's not been dropped because he's been played badly. It's Harry Anderson's been promoted because that's what today's game dictates. So I think Anthony Scully's done himself the world of good with his last couple of performances. Any player in this team, bar potentially Grant or Monsma, have got to be aware that there is an outside chance that they'll drop out of the squad or out of the first 11 and having done nothing wrong at all.
Yeah, it's a fair point indeed. That's why you're the pundit, Gary. We didn't talk about Conor McGrandles there. We're going to have a chat about him very shortly. But first of all, these are his pre-match thoughts.
Yeah, it was really important. I think it was a lot better performance compared to the Accrington and the Shrewsbury one. Accrington and Swindon games, even though we weren't quite at it, I think it was a better performance, especially when we went 1-0 down. It showed like a different kind of side to us as well to kind of react and come back from behind. So I think that was another kind of wee test that we managed to pass, and it showed a different side to us.
Yeah, certainly. I looked at the appearances of the midfield 3. I think you're all over 20 appearances this season already. You're only in the start of December. It's been quite a crazy year so far, hasn't it?
It's been really crazy. There's been so many games, and I think December there's about 10 games or something, 9 games. So I think everyone's going to be needed, even the boys who haven't maybe played as much as they wanted so far. So I think, as you said, there's so many games, and I think I'm just happy to have played a part in most of them.
Yeah, I mean, it was the return of the midfield three who started the season with Liam's injury once again. Do you feel like you've learnt each other's games a lot more than you had back at the start of the season? Did you feel more comfortable in that three?
Yeah, definitely. I think that comes with games anyway, though. I think even when Bridge is playing well, every game you play, you learn more and more about the person. And kind of Bridge and Granty in that kind of holding position bring different things. So I think playing with them, you kind of know what they're better at than what they're not so good at. So I think, we've learned a lot of each other. I think that just comes to playing games.
You had a great chance on Tuesday night. How close are you to getting that first goal, do you think, for Lincoln?
I've had so many great chances, just can't score them in it. I'm really due one. It's something that I'm really working on to get in the positions. I just need to probably be a bit more composed, or maybe not as composed, and just let the shots go a bit earlier. But yeah, I'm quite frustrated that I'm not scoring. But I think if I keep getting in those positions, then it'll come.
Yeah, midfield dynamo Conor McGrandles speaking to BBC Radio Lincolnshire's Rob Makepeace there. Gary, let's start with that topic then of him scoring goals. He's desperate by the sounds of that, isn't he, to get on the score sheet?
Yeah, he is. And he's actually been in some quite good positions as well over the last couple of weeks. I write my match report as the game goes on. And both of the most recent games, I've kind of commented on Conor McGrandles in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes. He's a player that's really at it from the get-go. He does pop up in certain positions. He does just need, like a couple of the other players, a stroke of luck, but he's certainly been close. I don't think he's a midfielder that's ever going to score you 7 or 8 goals a season. But, 1 or 2 will be nice, and it will come.
Let's get to some of your comments then, and then we'll resume that chat on Conor McGrandles. Gordon Gardner says, what a great contribution from Steve Haynes. Don't know him personally, but he's clearly a proper football fan. Yeah, he certainly is, Gordon. Sid the Imp, Simon Chanter says, Grant, brilliant player. Dan Pemberton, I should say, says Grant better in the central role. And we've had a comment from Royalty as well. Pete Hutchinson, Gary's dad, has got in touch. He says, love this starting lineup. I think it's only taken him 3 months to drop a comment, hasn't it, Gary?
Well, he actually was on my case on a dog walk saying he stopped commenting because they never got read out. So I'm delighted you picked that one out, Sam.
Pete, I'm sorry. Do keep the comments coming in, please. I will do my best to read them. Gary had to ask me to read that one out, so I've obviously been doing something wrong there. So, Pete, thank you very much for your comment, and I promise I'll do my best. I'll endeavour to read them out throughout the course of this season. Great to have you on the show. Let's go back to that Conor McGrandles chat then, Gary. How impressed have you been with him overall?
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Conor. And I think, dare I say, there are 2 types of footballers. There are the sexy footballers, the players that kind of, the step overs and the goals and the runs, and they're your Brennan Johnsons and at times your Harry Andersons and your Anthony Scullys, your George Grants, your Lewis Monsmers. And then there are functional footballers. There are the footballers that without them in the side, it wouldn't quite be the same. But perhaps sometimes you don't notice what they do. They tend to be defenders or defensive midfielders. But Conor McGrandles, for me, at the moment, is falling into that category. And players in the past who have fallen into that category for me are the likes of Scott Kerr, the likes perhaps of John Finnegan, the likes of Alex Woodyard. Now, Conor McGrandles is really busy. When you watch him, he covers every blade of grass in that kind of box-to-box area. He does pop up with an opportunity every so often. I don't think that fans always see what he does, and I think it's harder when you're watching on iFollow than when you're watching in person, because when you're watching in person, you can watch a player coming from way off in the distance and where he's making his runs from, or where he's getting into cover to, and sometimes you can't see that on the screen. So I think McGrandles is a player who fans are more likely to appreciate when we're all back in the stand, and you can see just exactly how much work he does.
That's a really interesting point that you raised there about fans being back and actually seeing different aspects of players' games. Do you think that eventually when the fans return to the LNER that maybe opinions will change slightly on some players perhaps? I mean, obviously the opinions are pretty strong at the moment, but from maybe a formation sort of wise, or from the way that maybe players are setting up during the start of the game? Do you expect to see something slightly different, perhaps?
Yeah, 100%. I think fans will see more. I think you tend to get it with when a camera follows play, you don't always see where players are running from, where they're kind of making the runs to. And Ben picked up on the podcast about a run Teo Eden made ahead of one of the goals the other night. And now Michael then said, look, you don't see Teo's run, but he's made this run. He's drawn somebody away for this then to go and happen, for another action to happen. And you do see that, or certainly a section of the support see that when we're at the ground. And also when you see a player arriving late in the box, a replay doesn't always show where they've come from. And sometimes the best bits of goals, or the crucial bits of goals, are those first couple of seconds before the guy who gets it scores. Where's the ball come from? Who's won that tackle? Who's made the run to allow that player to be free? You can't always see it on iFollow. I'm not saying you don't see it, but you can't always see it. So the functional players, I think, will benefit more. Conor McGrandles will benefit more. Teo Eden will benefit more. I think Tom Hopper will benefit more from having fans in the stadium as well.
Interesting stuff, Gary. Appreciate your time as ever. Right, the Imps, of course, facing Rochdale at Scotland this afternoon. The two sides have met quite a few times over the years, haven't they? But here's what happened the last time they met at Scotland. Yes, Sylvia, by Current Climate, your track of choice for those highlights there. And Gary, it's another one of those games that seems like such a long time ago. The team is almost unrecognisable, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was an era ago, because it was pre-Michael Appleton. I think it was in that spell where we were managerless. I think it was the only point we picked up, if I'm correct, in that little spell as well. So we weren't actually that bad that day. We were woeful in the first half. We came out in the second half and should have won the game. But it's a different Lincoln City side. It's a recent kit. You know, you think that the last time we saw the Imps play at Centrebank, we were in that kit, but it's a lifetime ago in terms of our club progression.
Right, let's get an opposition view then. Delighted to say that Dean Smith, not the Aston Villa manager, but Dean Smith from the RochdaleAFC.com podcast joins us now. Dean, great to have you on the show. Let's start with the season summary then. 18th in the table so far. Does that tell the full story?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. We've had sort of moments like on Tuesday night where we've kind of just exploded really, and in those games we look like we can beat anyone in the league really. But there's definitely deficiencies in the squad. There's definitely been times that have been frustrating for supporters, because there's been games where we've struggled to break down strong defensive sides, teams that set up a little bit too deep for us. But I think 18th is probably a fair reflection of where we're at the moment. And I think most supporters would take that come the end of the season, given that at the start of the season we were sort of odds on to go down.
But you're coming off the back of a massive 4-0 win away at Plymouth. And we as Lincoln fans know just how difficult it is to go there. What happened there?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. like I say, we've sort of struggled against teams that have sat a little bit too deep for us and made it difficult for us to break them down. Whereas we got a really early goal at Plymouth, and obviously they have such a good home record. I think they were maybe expecting to roll us over a little bit. Getting that goal meant they had to come out even more, and it just gave us a lot of space on the counter-attack, which we were able to exploit. We also welcome back Stephen Humphreys before I think Northampton was his first start after an injury layoff. And he's made a massive difference, to be honest. He gives us so much more going forward. He scored against both Northampton and again on Tuesday against Plymouth. So I think that's been a big difference in the last couple of games. But yeah, nobody expected us to win 4-0 on Tuesday. I know that much for sure. So definitely a night for us to celebrate, because we haven't had too many of them, to be honest, in the last couple of years.
Hi, Dean. I'm just interested, Callum Camp's obviously such a big player for you last season. How hard has his departure hit the squad, and who's kind of stepped into his shoes this season?
Yeah, massive. Obviously, he came through the youth system and made over 200 appearances for the club. I think it was always sort of inevitable that he was going to move on at the end of the season. Peterborough came in for him last summer and decided he wanted to stay in the Northwest. So that's why we sort of had him for another year, and it was probably his best year for us as well last season. We've sort of missed a bit of creativity, like I say, again, breaking teams down when we've had a lot of possession. And Camps was the sort of player that could do that when he was on his game. I think Alex Newby is the player that's sort of been tasked as being the creative linchpin going forward. And he's had games. He's not been massively consistent, but he's never been a Football League player before, so he's obviously going to take some time to get used to the league. But when he's on it, he looks like a really exciting player, and I think it's up to him to sort of create those chances for Humphreys, and the link up between them two, although we've not been able to see much of it yet due to Humphreys' injury, is definitely an encouraging sign for the rest of the season.
Dean, haven't had a chance to see your starting lineup this afternoon. I presume you have. What have you made of it overall? Any surprises for you?
I haven't seen it yet. We're usually the worst for getting our starting 11 out. I'll be surprised if it's out by now, to be honest with you. Usually, it's been times in the past where it's about 15 minutes until kickoff before anyone knows who's playing. So, I can't imagine that there are too many surprises. Jake Beasley picked up an injury on Tuesday night against Plymouth. He scored his first league goal and then took a bit of a blow to the head a couple of minutes later, and the game was suspended for 15 minutes. We ended up scoring about 12 minutes into injury time in that first half, actually. So I can't see him being fit enough to play. I think what we'll probably do as a result is it's likely we'll bring in another midfielder, because we don't have too many forward options. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jimmy Ryan or Stephen Dooley, perhaps, who've come into midfield, and we'll probably try and it'll maybe change the way we play a little bit, in that we'll try and keep hold of possession a little bit more, which is something that the manager likes to do.
Well, you're right on Stephen Dooley. He does come into that midfield spot, Dean. I've got the starting 11 here. It is Jay Lynch, Ryan McLaughlin, Ian O'Connell, or Ewan O'Connell, I should say, Stephen Dooley, Aaron Morley, Stephen Humphreys, Alex Newby, Jimmy Keohan, Ollie Rathbone, Hayden Roberts, and Matty Lund. So that's your starting 11. What do you make of that?
Yeah, pretty much as expected. Like I say, only the one change with Beasley dropping out. We don't have a huge amount of squad depth, so that's not particularly surprising. We do tend to keep the same sort of 14, 15 players that are playing when everyone's fit. So, not a huge surprise. Like I say, we'll probably try and keep hold of the ball in the midfield a little bit more than we have done in the last couple of games by virtue of having one less striker in the starting 11. But Humphreys is more than capable of sort of stepping in and being that fulcrum of the attack to sort of play the longer balls up to when we need to. So, not too surprising. I think the main thing from the last couple of weeks has been that Talaji Bowler's dropped out and Jimmy Keohane's come in at left back, which has allowed Ryan McLaughlin to sort of slot into the right back position, and he's done quite well as well. So it was no slight on Bowler, because I think he started quite well, but he's not got any Football League experience before this season. So I think he was maybe struggling with the sort of step up to man's football. But Keohane and McLaughlin are both more than capable in the fullback slots, and McLaughlin gives us a little bit more sort of drive from that position as well going forward.
What about Lincoln City then, Dean? What have you made of them so far this season?
Yeah, you can't help but be really impressed, can you? I mean, second in the league, it's. I don't think again anyone was really expecting quite such an impressive start from Lincoln. I think there was a couple of defeats, wasn't there, last month, and it maybe looked like the wheels were not that the wheels were coming off, but maybe that there was sort of a little bit of a stagnation, maybe something that early start maybe starting to drop off. But obviously since then you've picked up a few more really good results, and you can't help but be impressed. I was saying yesterday, I was really impressed in the summer with some of the transfers as well. Bridcut coming in looks like an incredible transfer on paper. Big turnaround in the squad, but when you bring in quality players in, I don't think it matters as much as it might do at other clubs. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough game for us today. There's no doubt about that.
Let's bring some match pictures in then from the Crown Oil Arena, or Spotland as we know it. And Gary, I mean, it's another one of those. It's a sunny day there. It just whets the appetite, doesn't it? Place that you've been to at all often?
I've been a couple of times. I've never seen us lose there. I think we won a couple of times in the Keith era, and I remember going one year thinking we never get anything at Rochdale and coming away with a win. I quite like it because it's a traditional ground. Rochdale are, what I would class as traditional opponents of ours. I think every single year through my teenage years, we played Rochdale. We were in the lower leagues together. You have to admire, and I'm not just saying this because we've got Dean on at the moment, but you have to admire what Rochdale have done in sustaining League One football when they were, perennially a League 4 or Division 4 club. I wish them all the best after today, because I like to see proper football clubs ingrained in the community, run the right way, succeed. Yeah,
here. Dean, just finally then, how do you see today going?
I think given where Lincoln are in the league, I think we've got to be realistic and say that a draw would probably be a good result for us. I think the last few games between us at Spotland have ended in draws, and to be honest, I struggle to see us creating enough chances with an extra striker sort of missing out of the squad to get enough goals to win the game. So I'll happily take a 1-1 draw, so I'll stick with that.
Dean, really appreciate your time this afternoon. We'll let you get off and enjoy the game. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Dean.
That's Dean Smith from RochdaleAFC.com. Right. Someone that I promised I'd get on Matchday Live is Cornell Bruman. He messaged me a few times about coming on. He does his own podcast as well, something you can check out on his YouTube channel. He's a very enthusiastic fan. This is his score prediction ahead of today's game.
This is Cornell Bruman giving my score prediction and the scorer for today's game when we Mighty Imps play the Rochdale and beat the Rochdale. The scorers are going to be Tom Hopper and Brennan Johnson, and the score that we're going to win today, and when we get the 3 points and we stay second, pushing all the big teams all the way this season, is going to be 2-1 to the Mighty Lincoln, because we can win this game. We can beat the Rochdale the same way we beat Wigan this week just gone. If same way we do that, we're going to do that to the Rochdale, because anything is possible this season for us, Lincoln.
That's what we like to see, isn't it? A lot of passion. Gary, that's it's enthusiastic, isn't it? It's what we like to see.
Yeah, Cornell's hugely enthusiastic. He has a very unique style, keeps me informed whenever I miss news on Twitter as well. So, we need fans. We need fans to believe. We need fans who are passionate. And Cornell is he's a breath of fresh air, I think, at times.
Absolutely. Gary, let's look ahead to some Lincoln City fixtures then, the upcoming ones. And at the moment, the way that I look at it, it's 3 of the next 4 after today, isn't it? There are home matches at the LNER Stadium. I think, including today's game, 4 out of 6 are against sides in the bottom half of the table as well. So this is a potentially pivotal time in Lincoln's season.
Yeah, 100%. Through to Boxing Day and just beyond Boxing Day, 3 home games, 1 away game. Of those home games, 2 of them against teams, I think, in the bottom 4. I may be mistaken. Sunderland at home is tough, but obviously they don't have a manager at the moment. I would expect Lee Johnson to be in situ by the time they come to us, so they might get the new manager bounce. But I was always told by my dad, if you're in and around at Christmas, the likelihood is you will be in and around it come May. Because you build up decent leads, you build up enough kind of goodwill in the bank to avoid dropping too far down the table. So when you look at the next few games, certainly Burton, Shrewsbury, Northampton, and today, there's an argument to be said that if we could take, let's say, 10 points from 12, and that might be over enthusiastic, I might be made to eat my words. It's going to be very hard for other teams in and around us to do that constantly. So we may go into the new year thinking, actually, there's a few then tough games coming up that we can afford to go and be happy with the draw, the likes of Peterborough, Portsmouth, and maybe Doncaster.
Yeah, that Sunderland game looks massive as well, doesn't it? And you'd think by then that they'd have a new manager and the new manager bounce, to coin a cliche that comes with that as well, Gary.
Yeah, absolutely. It does look huge. The thing is, they're a Premier League side. They're the biggest club, in my opinion, outside of the Premier League. They're bigger than anybody in the Championship. So it's just great to have them on the fixture list. You look ahead to March, travelling there as well on March the 20th. It's just a testament of where we are. But I look for the other games. I look for the games, not that we should win, but you would. That's arrogant, but you would expect to take points from. And where we are now, you're looking at kind of every other game through January. There's points there. February looks like another month where you can build up in the bank. When I first saw the fixture list, I got to the end of February and thought, I'd hope that we're safe by then. I think we can get to the end of February and think, I hope actually that we're not too far away from staying in the top 6 at that point.
Gary, Niall, Stephen, Scott and David are letting me know that Lee Johnson is the new Sunderland manager. We can see pictures there at the Crown Oil Arena. Just a quick bit of reaction to that, Gary. First of all, what do you make of the appointment? And second of all, actually, to sort of counter my own argument, is it a good thing, actually, that Sunderland's first game or first game in charge with a new manager won't be at the LNER Stadium against Lincoln?
Not surprised. I saw this morning that he was close to agreeing the deal. He did a phenomenal job at Bristol City in bringing players through and keeping them in the Championship as well. So I think it's a big appointment for Sunderland. It's the sort of manager that if you're Sunderland, you're a Sunderland supporter, you look at and think, actually, we mean business now. I'm surprised Danny Cowley didn't get it. I really am. I think he was primed to go somewhere like that. In terms of is it a good thing or not with it being the first game, I don't really know. You would imagine he's probably not going to be in the dugout today, so it could be his first game in the dugout at Sincil Bank. I don't know. It just depends what sort of state the squad is actually in. If morale is low and he goes in and he sees a few players that he's not overly keen on, new manager bounce isn't necessarily positive. You look at when Michael first came in, he had a tough time for the first couple of weeks, didn't he? It took a while to get his first win, ironically, against Sunderland. So, we shall see. But it doesn't surprise me that Lee Johnson's gone there. Good appointment.
Jake Tong has let us know that Lee Johnson is in the dugout for today's game that Sunderland have as well. There you go. Pictures from the Crown Oil Arena then. The Imps warming up around about half an hour to go before today's game. Of course, you can watch it on iFollow by going to www.weareimps.com/iFollow. Let me bring you the team as well. Whilst you're looking at those pictures, or I'll bring it on your screen there. We've got Alex Palmer in goal, TJ Omer, Lewis Monsma, Joe Walsh, Teo Eden. They make up the back four, the back five, including the keeper. It is then George Grant, the captain. No Liam Bridcut once again this afternoon. Conor McGrandles, James Jones. Front three of Brennan Johnson, Harry Anderson and Tom Hopper. Gary, a lot of the comments coming in this afternoon are basically saying really pleased to see that team. It is one of the strongest, if not the strongest 11.
Yeah, I think when I first saw it, that was my gut reaction, that arguably you're looking at around our strongest 11 bar, Liam Bridcut's injury. I think even if Callum Morton was fit, probably Tom Hopper would be our first choice number 9. I think there's also a big hint looking ahead to Tuesday, which might fly under the radar a little bit. Shrewsbury in the Papa John's Trophy, but Remy Howard's back on the bench. That's actually big news. Because it does then give us some flexibility to rest one or two first-team players ahead of Sunderland and still be competitive at Shrewsbury. It's quite a strong-looking bench when you think the likes of Zach El-Bazedi fit, can't get on the bench. So we're beginning to get the options back at the moment, and it's nice to see us have that, even though we've got a couple of injuries. So again, it probably demonstrates actually the squad depth, doesn't it? When you think Liam Bridcut's out, Adam Jackson's out, Callum Morton's out, and yet we're talking about it arguably being looking a strong 11.
Just finally again, Gary, the question that you hate me to ask you, how do you see it playing out this afternoon? You did a good prediction last week. I believe you were right and I was wrong. Shock horror. So enjoy it.
I would never remind you of that, Sam, obviously.
I'm looking it up and putting it on social media, but we won't go into it.
I think that there might actually be a couple of goals in this for us today. I think it'll be an open game. I'm going to side with with Dean. I think the Rochdale fan. I think it will be a draw. I'm going to go for 1-1.
There you go, 1-1. Fair prediction. Let us know what you think in the comments as well. Do keep them coming on for the next half an hour or so. Lincoln City fans can interact between yourselves and then get the build up on iFollow by going to www.weareimps.com/iFollow. All the build up will be with Michael Horton and Rob Makepeace from round about now, I believe. That is it from us, myself and Gary Hutchinson. Really appreciate your time on today's Matchday Live. We'll be back this time next week when the Imps face Sunderland. We'll see you then. Enjoy the game. Bye for now.